Gentlemen.
Mac? That's pretty good for a dead guy.
We all want you to know none of this is personal.
What you do, what you become is not my concern. The world is full of so-called men like you, and in a perfect world, everything we do comes with a price, but this ain't a perfect world. People do bad things. You're lucky you get a chance to set it right, but most of the time it goes unpunished. This ain't one of them times. The mistake you made was you killed my friend, so I'm gonna kill each and every one of you, and the only disappointment in it for me is that I only get to do it once.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right. I'm Reese. What that was.
I'm excited to hear what that accent was.
It was a non-accent. That's what it was.
I didn't have the confidence in it, and I was like,
It's fine.
stop.
I'm Reese. To my left is
David.
Further off to my left,
Irina.
across from me,
Noah.
You thought
with
about
confidence. You got to announce your name to the world like you're screaming it
Gusto.
on top
Come
of
on,
the mountains.
Piopi.
Noah.
And baking a cake in the middle of a hurricane, we have.
AJ.
Is this weather kind of conducive to your baking talents? Does it help you kind of, get through the daily baking grind, or is it kind of more of a hindrance?
I mean, it's, I don't know.
I thought they evacuated the island.
And today, we're off to a great start, guys. Today, we're talking about The Equalizer 2.
Excuse me. The sequelizer?
Yeah, that's what they
So-
jokingly referred to on the
No,
on set.
that's what I'm calling it.
No, but I know you.
What are you talking?
And I know
I didn't read it.
that you read the IMDb.
I didn't read the IMDb.
The
facts.
first IMDb fact is the cast and crew jokingly referred to the sequel as
I have no
the
idea.
Sequelizer.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
He loves to carry over jokes.
He says with a
He loves
guilty smile.
I didn't read it.
The Equalizer 2, film that came out in 2018. It's directed by Antoine Fuqua, the same director of the first film. He also directed Training Day, The Magnificent Seven, Shooter, Olympus Has Fallen, The Replacement Killers, and King Arthur, among others. The movie stars Denzel Washington, reprising the role of McCall, or Bob McCall, Pedro Pascal, Ashton Sanders, Orson Bean, Bill Pullman, Melissa Leo, and Jonathan Scarfe.
Scarface?
Or Scarf.
Scarf.
I don't think it's Scarf.
Scarf,
I think
Scarf.
It's Scarfe. The movie's written again by Richard Wenk, and it's based on the TV show that ran in the mid to late 80s, also titled The Equalizer, which was created by Michael Sloan and Richard Lindheim. And if you are new to this podcast, on this podcast we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So
you
gang,
guys. Oh, dang it.
ha, threw you off. I knew
got
you were
me.
gonna be like, so guys.
I had to join you that time.
So, gang, had y'all seen The Equalizer 2 before your prep work for this episode? Let's go with you, David.
Nope. Didn't even know these existed until we had to do them. Which,
did-
look, okay, I was talking to Irina about this earlier. I am amazed that I never heard of this. This came out, 2 years ago? Something like
Yes,
that?
and the other one 6 years ago.
That was pre-COVID, so I thought I would have seen something.
Yeah, and it's Denzel Washington.
I know. I didn't see anything. Didn't realize it was a thing. Yes, I know. It's sad.
Irina.
Saw the first one, didn't realize there was a sequel or even a sequel on the horizon, so no.
All right. Noah.
No.
No, just nothing else.
No.
Wait, so there is something else.
No.
AJ.
Yeah, I always thought Man on Fire was a classic. I'm surprised no one else here has seen it or heard of it.
Man of Fire?
The
And
weird thing
on
is that one's
fire.
more similar to the first one than it is the second one, but I'll take it.
Isn't that Bruce
You know how hard
Springsteen?
Equalizer
Bruce
is to name match?
Springsteen?
Oh, probably. Yeah, I can imagine. What did you have like a couple that you were considering that weren't Man of Fire, or was it just like, wow, there's nothing I can rhyme with Equalizer?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anything with equal in it is going to be something with Equalizer or like a ripoff. And
Yeah.
then Lies, I already went with True Lies, so
True.
You should have went with the Hunger Games.
that's fine.
The Fly. Z.
You could have done a Equilibrium.
He's like, guys, this is my bit.
There it is.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Unlike David, I had heard of the Equalizer for sure, but I had not seen either one. Hadn't seen the first one, so of course I haven't seen the second one. I wouldn't just blindly go into a sequel without having seen the first one, unless it was notably detached from the original. So there you go. That's
yeah,
my background.
you can't hold that against Reese. He's letting you know.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're getting into it pretty quick this time, because I feel like we did a big preamble on the first one, and this one doesn't require quite as much.
Right.
So, with that said, David, do you want to do our call to action before we get into this story?
Yeah. This is Franchise Killer. We do this for you guys. We love doing it. And if you guys like to hear us do it, please go and help us out.
Okay, this is not a porno.
That's weird.
Wait, what? What did I say?
You were going so well. Just keep going.
Okay. Well, if you want to do some special... All right, never mind.
If you need some special services.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars is the best thing you could do for us. It helps us out, and it encourages us to keep doing this. We're doing it for free. So if you want us to keep doing it, tell us that you like it. 5 stars on Apple.
Yeah.
5 stars.
Also,
in
we're on
Apple.
Instagram, which I man. So if you feel like checking those out, we post episode updates. We also post on our Twitter.
Yeah,
that
I'm
Reese
on the
is
old Twitters. So.
And we are posting all of our previous episodes on YouTube, slowly catching up to where we are now. So if you are that YouTube person, then there you go.
So basically what we're saying is if you like David more, you go and support the YouTube or Instagram. If you like Reese more, you hit up the Twitter.
Okay, that's not fair. You already have a way bigger lead.
That's not true. You had an earlier start.
I know,
If
but
you like
Instagram's
Reddit-
harder to build.
Nudge me to wake up and get back on it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And if you like Napster, Noah.
Napster. No, LimeWire.
LimeWire.
And you can find us under FK_7264.
All right. With all that said, let's get into that story.
Baby!
Robert, I'm your only friend. It's great you're helping all these random people and everything. But stay off the radar. Something happened to one of ours. So I'm obligated to look into it.
Thought you were retired.
Oh, I am. Just like your dad.
Yeah. What's the matter? They knew what floor she was on.
They're tying up loose ends.
Exactly.
I was your partner for 7 years, Mac. It's a mistake to go to war with him.
It's go time.
They're going to war with me.
It's go time.
Whoever did this have off-chart skill sets. They're with the agency. Family. You ever see Star Trek? Very good. Call 911.
Go time. Roll the dough with a good grind and I run out with a bouton that's a relay race with a bouquet. They say, K, you gon' marry mine. Yeah. Okay.
They killed my friend. So I'm gonna kill each and every one of them. And the only disappointment is that I only get to do it once.
Die from last y'all. Die from last y'all. Die from last y'all.
Seeing you carrying all those books around, I figured you for some kind of teacher.
I'm a high-level paid government assassin.
It's go time.
Former Marine and DIA operative Robert McCall now lives in a diverse apartment complex in Roxbury, Boston. He works as a Lyft driver and assists the less fortunate with the help of a close friend and former colleague at the DIA, Susan Plummer. McCall travels to Istanbul to retrieve the 9-year-old daughter of a bookstore owner, Grace Braylick, who was kidnapped by her abusive Turkish father as a means to punish Grace. He also helps Sam Rubenstein, an elderly Holocaust survivor who is looking for a painting of his sister. The siblings were separated in the Nazi death camps and the painting had been auctioned off. After discovering the apartment's courtyard has been vandalized, McCall accepts an offer from Miles Whitaker, a young resident with an artistic but troubled background, to repaint the walls.
I like that intro. I feel like that covers the bases better than the first movie did.
Yeah, so I was kind of going into this movie, like I had seen The Equalizer, the original, and I was like, okay, this is the kind of the best iteration of this that we're going to get. I kind of went into that movie with low expectations. And this one, I just, in my mind, just a preconceived thought that this was going to be like the sloppy seconds. And I was kind of proven wrong, and I don't think it was from the very first shot, because I don't think the train sequence really did much for me, as it doesn't ever really...
It's basically just like the first movie, where it's like, yep, he's equalizing, there he goes.
But I think the difference here is that obviously this is an international trip, and so I don't know, I think at the very beginning, I had a very different tone from the first that I was getting, and I liked it.
Yeah.
So,
So, go ahead.
I slightly differed. I didn't really like the international aspect of it. I mean, I know it kind of had to happen with the last one ending in Moscow or whatever, but it felt kind of trivializing what he did.
Well, there was talk behind this movie. They wanted to kind of branch this franchise out a bit, make it international, and make it almost like this darker, edgier kind of Bond series. And so that's what you get here, I think.
Yeah.
And whether you liked it or not, I actually think the direction from Antoine Fuqua actually catches up with Denzel Washington on this one. Like I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah.
right.
But I think there's a lot more attention to little details in the direction, along with Denzel's performance that is also...
And the cinematography. I think the cinematography was much better in this one.
I thought the cinematography was great in both.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say this one is more consistent. I think the first one does that jumping back and forth with like the fighting and the Russian mob with him helping out the people in his everyday life, whereas this one, it's a little more balanced.
Yeah. I think what's improved in this one is the writing. There's a lot less cheesy throwaway lines in this one that are like, okay, I get it. This is like your typical action movie. I actually feel like there's a lot more, there's a deft hand and more subtlety to the writing and the direction. I think the story, we'll break it down obviously throughout this, but I think the story is still the same kind of, paint by numbers. Another funny thing about this movie is it kind of loses the plot in the middle again, just like the first one.
Right.
But I do think the directing and the writing is a little more, it's kicked up a notch for me.
I think there's a little more, and basically what you're saying, there's more intelligence to the building of this. And that's what I appreciate with a sequel is like that's how it should be. You should improve upon the first. And I think they have.
Yeah.
But also his occupation, I guess, his day job
as a Lyft
makes
driver.
a lot more sense than working at a Home Depot or Home Mart.
Yeah,
Reminds me of Collateral.
Right.
Yes, totally. I hadn't even made that connection. That'd be a good companion piece to this, honestly.
It would.
But I was like...
I actually watched it and really wanted to talk about it, but I couldn't find an ounce of wanting to do a sequel or franchise off of that. But
Right.
Collateral's so great.
But it makes sense because this is kind of like basically keeping his ear to the ground, seeing, how the nightlife is going, checking in on people. And this is an occupation where people don't really pay attention to you as a driver. They're kind of like absorbed with their own lives. So he picks up on a lot of things going on with them in the back seat. So
and I love that the director had the confidence to just show this kind of extended montage at the beginning where nothing really eventful is happening.
Right.
It's just him, doing his daily drive, and there's a number of different, people in the back seat that he's observing and getting little snippets of their lives.
Yeah. The one that I weirdly really liked was the guy that was trying not to drink, he's like really struggling with it. And you can see like Denzel Washington does such a good job of coming across as incredibly empathetic, and just kind of like, kind of struggling on his behalf, it's really interesting to see that.
But also keeping that kind of straight
Yeah,
face
like this isn't my business. I can't say anything.
Yeah.
So he actually takes his hat off when the guy does the prayer.
Right.
So subtly little cues there that show that he was really paying attention.
But yeah, it carries over the theme of the Equalizer being more than just being about violence. Like he's trying to help people out in any way he can, whether it's in a violent fashion or not.
Yes.
And the biggest scene there was probably those rich guys that had the one girl up there and obviously was raped, and he comes back later and wrecks the apartment, and that one guy who was trying to fit in, he kind of goes a little easier on him, but still sets him straight.
Right.
And I coined that sequence as, and this is because of Noah, taking out the Chads.
Is that like taking out the trash?
The ultra Chads, I should say.
Yeah, they were ultra Chads.
But that scene was so visceral, and it almost did the action, or at least showed the action better than it did in the first one, I thought. And it's what I love about it is McCall is so calculated, and Denzel Washington is so good at kind of showing you how he's like dialed in perfectly to the point where it's like, I'm going to kill, or I'm going to hurt these people just like a hair before death. It's like, I'll snap this guy's neck, but it's not going to be fatal. Like I'm literally like, I don't want to kill these guys, but I'm going to seriously F them up.
Yeah, they're going to think more than twice next time.
Like the one where he pulls down. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, the part where he just pulls down that guy by the tie and he hits the glass table. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cool.
Yep. Yeah, it shows him, being practical and using his talent and skills, where the first one you had the scene where he moves all the little things on the desk because he's calculating, doing 3D chess and all that stuff.
Right.
Which verged on a little cheesy. This one dialed it back a bit, but still shows him doing the 30-second timer on his watch. He uses the Amex black card, which is metal, to slit the guy's throat. So he's using the tools around him at his disposal.
Right.
Yeah.
This one lingered. He carries a gun with him. You see him put it in his back pocket, I think, or back waistband.
Right.
Yeah, this one's less shy about showing him with, firearms.
Right. Yeah.
I think he only actually kills one person with a firearm in this movie, but he has
like
them
last resort.
Well, and it wasn't like
thing.
straight up shooting him. I think the guy's hand was still on the gun.
Yeah.
And so he kind of forced him to shoot himself in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of strange though, because in the first one I was like, no, we don't want this guy with guns, and then this one they're like, yeah, he can hold a gun. Like it seems like they're trying to say something, but they're also not really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think this movie does a good job of kind of fleshing out who he is too in more subtle ways than just like, yeah, I'm a good person, I'm gonna help you. So especially with going back to the montage with all the people in the car, he doesn't help all of them. A lot of them have issues, but it's like he's discerning on, this is something they need to solve themselves versus this is something I need to step in for.
Yeah.
So I really, really like this aspect of his character that they've incorporated.
Yes.
Also, the thing with the taking out the Chad scene, what I liked about that versus other situations he's been in is he starts with saying, normally I give people the chance to, atone for their sins kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing that here.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but the not doing that was, I'm taking your phones and all the videotapes. Like, you don't have a chance to hide from this. But they did have the choice on whether they were going to be hurt.
Yes.
They chose violence, so he acted violently.
So satisfying. So we also get introduced to this is another clever subversion that this movie does. We're introduced to this villain who we think is going to be like the main bad guy in this. He takes out this husband and wife.
Ugh,
you don't really know why. It's brutal though.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this one's big bad. They're opening up strong, and we're gonna come back to this guy periodically to see how he ends up kind of, coming across McCall eventually. Of course, that doesn't play out that way. But what did y'all think of that about this kind of intro sequence to our villain or the big bad?
I like it because you don't know exactly how it's going to correlate, but it will. So, and I love little teasers like that.
It makes me think of Ocean's 12 in a way,
Right.
but completely 100% better.
Well,
I'm surprised you drew that connotation.
I don't know. It's like this weird like piecing together where you're kind of getting little puzzle pieces to the whole.
So the Equalizer, the first film, was, yes, it had brutal moments, but this movie feels even more brutal. So that scene was a little more emotionally charged than I
the part
was expecting.
where he shoots his wife and he's like, this is happening.
Yeah.
Like he tells the other guy, he's like, this is happening.
Yeah.
You just deal
it's
with
like
it.
you put the gun in your mouth. This is happening. No, you don't have a say in it.
That was
also,
honestly...
There's not the kind of overdone, cheesy kind of bravado of the moment where like, yeah, we're hired killers and you're going down, you know, kind of a thing.
Angry.
Yeah, no, it was just like, this is a killing. I have to kill you.
Also,
you know?
he's like, there's no reason for it. I got your name on a piece of paper. This is happening.
And what kind of was jarring about that little offhanded comment he made was it was like, yeah, he's been in a situation like this before where people are like in disbelief.
Right.
And they're like trying
Begging
to talk
for their
themselves out of
life.
it.
Oh, yeah.
He's like,
yeah, I've seen it all
like,
before.
He's like, I've seen this before. This is happening. Just accept it.
Right.
Yeah, I love the way they do that with characters. And
Yeah.
this one did a good job of that.
I just hate that they're, oh man, and this is the emotional part, but it's obviously trying to make it look like he killed his wife and then killed himself. And right before his kids got there, which is
messed up.
I think you just had a son.
Yeah, it really makes you...
Yeah.
But this movie does what the first one did, where it's like, yep, I want that guy to die. I really do.
Well, yeah, then there's that whole line where he's like, come on, your son's coming soon, you know, kind of a thing. Like, gotta get this over with before, you know, your son arrives.
Okay, so before we move on in the story, let's talk about Miles, who is this... he's basically this kid that lives not too far, or pretty much next door.
It's the same complex.
Yeah, to McCall. He's played by Ashton Sanders.
We talk about Ralph 2.0.
Yeah, Ralph 2.0. The better Ralph, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The much better Ralph.
Well, hence the 2.0.
Yeah. But yeah, he basically observes McCall repainting some graffiti and kind of offers to, paint it. And he's kind of, trying to spark a conversation with McCall. He seems interested in, the arts. How do we feel about Miles?
I like him. I think this actor does a really good job of blending into character.
Yeah, and he's the kid from Moonlight.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
middle Chiron.
And just a little anecdote about this guy. Apparently, he was on. I saw a video while I was looking this up where he was on the red carpet, answering an interviewer's questions, and Denzel Washington is walking behind him, and he's stopped and talks to what's this actor's name? I want to know his name. Miles.
Ashton Sanders. Sorry.
Ashton Sanders. So he talks to Denzel, and like this is the first time he's meeting him, so he's amped, and he says like, I'm gonna work with you, man. I'm gonna work with you on a film. This was after Moonlight, but before Equalizer even started, and Denzel basically says, yeah. All right, see you at work, and walks off. And then, not long after they worked on Equalizer 2. So,
that's so cool.
It's such a good
I think
interaction.
Their chemistry is really good. Like they really do work well together. Where I don't think Denzel worked well with Ralphie from the pre.
One or the other.
Something like that.
There was something tonally very different about their personalities that just did not mix, I guess.
And Ralphie, his issues they came up, propped up out of nowhere.
Right.
It was like, oh, my mom's house burned down. I got to do this.
Yeah.
I can't follow my dream.
There wasn't a build-up between the two.
Yeah, there is no real plot development with Ralphie.
Yeah. With Miles, it's so much. It seems so much more organically.
Yes.
Built
organic is the right word. Yeah.
Yeah, they just have such a great rapport, and you can, at least when they're talking, I got much more of that.
Yeah.
Father-son type of, or some sort of like mentorship. Yeah. I actually almost got a Karate Kid vibe from it at the very beginning, where it's just like, hey, paint the thing, paint my room.
Yeah.
Like
wax
do
on,
this
wax
manual
off.
labor.
Yeah.
Next, I'm going to teach you how to fight people.
Yeah. That's totally what it is.
Ashton as well. He was really kind of nervous on set for the first day, but Denzel Washington saw he was having a little trouble and apparently came over to him and said like, "Hey, you were hired for a reason. You're an actor. You can do this."
He is the Equalizer.
I know, right? He's like, that is who he is.
Denzel's a living superhero.
Yeah.
Even though
he's just awesome.
Irene and I were talking about him on the way over here. Basically, he's so curt in the way he speaks. Very short. What would you say, Irene? Is deliberate the right word?
Yeah. He doesn't waste time using a lot of words. He just kind of directly answers something with a few words. You have to get very specific to get more out of him.
It's just like him in the movies.
Yeah.
You get a strong will out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. AJ, you want to continue that story unless you have anything else you wanted to add?
Susan and DIA officer Dave York, who is McCall's former partner, are called in to investigate a murder-suicide of an agency affiliate and his wife in Brussels. At their hotel, Susan is accosted in her room and killed. It is believed she died during a robbery by two men who got off the elevator on her floor. When he receives the news, McCall begins to investigate both her death and the case she was working on. McCall determines that the suspect's foreknowledge of her floor and the expertly delivered fatal stab suggests she was targeted. He also confirms that the incident Susan was looking into was staged to look like a murder-suicide, and that Susan's death is probably connected to it. McCall makes contact with York while he is jogging in Washington and informs him of his findings. Later, McCall rescues Miles, who had been lured away by a local gang. Miles then visits McCall, and McCall agrees to pay Miles to repaint his kitchen if Miles reads Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me.
So, another thing I noticed about this movie is that they actually gave Melissa Leo's character more personality in this one. Both of the plumbers. Bill Pullman's still pretty much the same, like kind of one note, but I could tell that they were like, okay, this is what's her name? I know the actress's name, but the character's name.
Oh, Susan?
Yeah, this is Susan Plummer's moment to, make us feel a little more invested in her character.
Yeah.
And gosh, like that scene where she is, kind of assaulted by those two.
Yeah.
They don't dilly-dally in that scene.
It's heart-wrenching.
I was surprised by the physicality of Melissa Leo in that sequence, like her actually putting up a fight.
But they did it in a realistic way. Like she knew self-defense or something, like which obviously in that position, I'm sure you might need to.
She injured them pretty badly. I honestly thought she was going to get away at one point. Like the fact that she stabs one of them in the back with some stuff while hurting them.
Like if you're going to fridge one of your only female characters, at least send her out on in a cool way. Like she didn't. It wasn't one of those pathetic scenes where like, oh no, I
slam her head against the table and like,
done.
oh, you're done.
Like no, she like seriously injured.
She's 1v2. It was
2v1. Yeah. But man, what a kind of a tooth and nail fight that I knew that I knew what the outcome was going to be, and actually I didn't. There was actually a point where you're right. I thought like,
oh, she's
she's gonna get out of this.
Yeah.
But this becomes like the kind of pivotal moment for the movie that gives it more of a narrative thrust for McCall.
Yeah.
Because it does end up making it personal, and now this is the one thing that would get him invested in something.
You know what this film has done that the first one already wasn't quite doing was you actually feel a lot of tension for these situations. Like the first was enjoyable because he's taking out the baddies, and in this one he does too, but you do feel the threat of the situation more with these people. Yeah. Like there is actually death on the line,
Yeah. And
we also explored McCall's background a little bit through Susan, with his wife and discussing because she visits him on her anniversary of her death, and that friendship we see kind of hit a wall, like they're just kind of joking around, and you suddenly feel that there's like something in the air that, and she picks up on it that maybe I shouldn't have come, all that stuff. It's sad, it's always hard on this day. So that right before her involvement in exploration of the scene, that her detective work and then her, killing, her murder was well done.
They did a very good job of trying to portray her as, yes, an old friend, just kind of understanding him without having to ask, and I love that.
And I will say there are like 2 or 3 like god tier scenes in this movie, and one of them comes when McCall is receiving the call.
Oh yeah.
While he's just having this casual conversation with Miles, and it's one of those scenes where you're like, I know how this scene is going, and then it's going to cut to something else. But Antoine Fuqua inserts this big emotional shift into the middle of this scene that you wouldn't normally expect it to be in. Like, he casually picks up the phone, and you see Denzel Washington doing what he does best with those micro expressions, like slowly turning to a more kind of grim expression. And you're like, oh, dang, I know exactly what he's hearing right now. I can imagine what he's being told, and he's reacting to every one of those every syllable that is being said.
Right.
But I thought that scene was so good. I don't know about y'all.
He left his book.
Yeah.
I love this and how this is done, but I think one of the things I wish would have happened, which I was kind of expecting at first, but it was never brought up, was the fact that it's been a while since the murder of this French, I guess he was involved with Interpol or something, and his wife. I thought she would at least maybe like mention it while she visited,
and this
to
is the
connect
movie.
The scenes a little bit, but she doesn't.
The movie is kind of like it's at least what it replaces the plot with is something interesting, but it is losing the main through line of the plot.
Right.
Like and
at least her saying like I'm suspicious of something, like at least knowing she might have known a little, about the situation.
And I know like kind of why they're doing that. It's so you don't think about, they don't want you to dwell on that because maybe you'll figure it out before the big reveal in this movie or the big twist.
Yeah.
But still, you do get a sense it's like, oh, this movie's kind of going in this different direction.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of the cuts and editing almost feel like, from a TV show, like a procedural, crime show, like almost like the original. And I don't know if that was an intentional style choice or not, but it doesn't really lend itself well to the flow of a, feature film.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Oh, you're right. Both of these movies aren't like the prime example of cinema.
Right.
But hey, I never saw these in the theater. I've just seen them on the small screen.
Yeah. So it's kind of,
They play well for me.
Oh, yeah. But it's, there is just definitely something where you feel like a certain narrative is sort of dropped. And then once you come back to it, you realize, oh, yeah, that was happening.
Yeah.
Or you're thinking, when are we going to get back to that other plot device that was brewing over here? So. Yeah. Speaking of brewing, this whole approaching storm element that's constantly going on in the background, that's a really nice touch. Yeah. Because it's not super obvious, but you keep hearing it like on little blurbs on the news, or he's listening to the radio, and it's just it's nice.
That better than those movies that are similar to this, where it's like, oh, bright sunshiny day, and suddenly it's the final battle and it's raining.
There's just rain. Yeah.
Any other zombie movie where they're just like sitting there and you just hear exposition from the news.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the virus broke out and
people attacking each other in a enraged rabies.
Rabies. Okay. Something I feel like we haven't touched on that much in this so far is the small storyline they're doing with him and the old guy with the painting.
Oh, that's
which
right.
I really like on, as the small scale Equalizer goes. Just him being there for the guy.
I liked it, but I didn't feel like it served the greater purpose of the movie.
Looking back,
it
had
it's like
too
that
much screen
Ralphie.
time.
Yes.
It's just a kind of another Ralphie type situation for me, where it kind of feels, he's the everyman. Everyone likes him. He does things for everyone. And it's like,
it's just to emphasize it,
Yeah, I know, but you don't really need to emphasize it in that way. Like, in a way that directs slightly
I almost
away
feel
from the
like
plot.
it was kind of he looks out for everyone sort of a thing, you know,
Even
where
the
like
elderly.
even when there's a huge issue that's very personal on a large scale, he still remembers the small person, you know, like I get that. But yes, I
much
agree
screen
that
time.
it was there's a little too much screen time on that. If it was just slightly more diminished, maybe, but otherwise it doesn't really serve much that you were already given with his other interactions.
Sorry, I feel like you can start these kinds of things at the beginning of the movie, and then once you hit the thick of the plot, you can drop it for a while, and then pick it back up at the end after the climax has,
which they do,
taken its course. Yeah,
right.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know.
It's like they often have it in not just the beginning. They like put that.
That's
part
what they
in
did
the
with
middle,
Miles in
or,
this
like-
too.
What I'll
Yeah,
say, go ahead.
You don't want to throw off the pace by putting it in the middle when people are, stuff's trying to be up and coming.
Yeah.
With the motion and the flow of it, but also, the average viewer, not to say this in a negative way, but when you watch a movie, you're looking for a certain attention span to watch that movie and get through it. So seeing this other character is nice, but it also takes away from Miles that you're trying to get invested in.
Right.
Yeah.
So
you need all those.
That's how I saw it.
I wish they had put all the eggs in the Miles basket. And I think they do. They put most of those eggs in that basket, which is good. Which in the first one they didn't. It was like Ralphie, and then they had these like random
The lady who got her ring
incidents.
stolen.
Yeah. So I think this one is smarter in the way that it really focuses in on Miles as the primary, like, this is the person that I'm going to help. I just don't... I was like, I felt moved by the result of this Holocaust survivor being reunited with what I assume was his wife at the end.
Sister.
Or sister,
Yeah, his
sorry.
sister. Magda.
See?
But it was
Attention.
like... I was only moved because these old actors were so adorable.
They really were. The guy was crying. He sold it.
It was less because the movie like made me feel that way.
You're like,
It
oh
was
wait,
like-
this is a
David,
thing.
Do you remember what he's from?
Hold on. Oh, I could do this.
Isn't he familiar?
He's very familiar. What is he from?
He's from How I Met Your Mother.
Oh wait, no, yeah. Robin's boyfriend that they made look older. Yes.
Yep, that's the guy.
Wow.
Bob. He played Bob.
Yep. But I do love this, but it definitely gives me the impression that it was one of those ideas that they really liked, and they just couldn't find themselves cutting it because they just really wanted to include it. One of those things where you created, but it doesn't really fit, so you try to make a way to make it fit.
Yeah.
And it's it shouldn't, because it doesn't really streamline the story.
Yeah.
It probably belonged in some other work, honestly.
Like the scene with the balls in Transformers 2 or 3 or whatever.
I don't know how I feel about that phrase.
I don't know if I
Or
would
the
equate
TV
it to
series
that.
format.
Yeah.
I think that's the style they were going for.
Yes.
honestly. And it, like you said, someone gets really invested in this idea and goes against their better judgment and keeping
Yes.
it in and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think that's what this was.
So we got 2 more bullet points to hit here before we move on. So we're introduced to Dave York, played by Pedro Pascal. Were y'all sniffing a little villain in this character, or
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
Well, kind of suspicious. Wow.
I was suspicious.
Kind of suspicious just because he's in kind of that role and you've seen this kind of
Yep,
movie
trope.
before and you're like,
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's going to be him.
A situation that happened that makes you know that it's kind of more obvious. No offense to your dad, but he walked by while we were watching and he goes, I have a feeling that guy's the villain.
Yeah.
And then later walks by after not watching the movie when he's like, is he the villain? We're like, yes. Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
there is, and it comes later on, but there is a scene where I had thought he might be the villain throughout
Yeah.
this. He's a great actor, but I could kind of see that, okay, there's something else to this character, that he's playing things close to the vest.
Right.
And what is this guy hiding? But there was a scene where it did convince me for a second that, he's probably good. And it was the scene after McCall is about to he pretty much avoided being assassinated or killed.
Yeah.
And
Was it the park scene?
No, he's going to visit York at his house.
Yeah.
And you think that someone's about to assassinate York because of the perspective of the camera.
Right.
And you're like, okay, York's about to be just dropped. So it had me for that scene. But yeah, other than that,
So
I think Pedro Pascal's really good in this as Dave York. And
Yeah.
he's like the second best actor who has been in any of these movies.
Yeah.
After Denzel. Like the first one didn't have anyone that came close to
What
him.
about Miles?
Okay, Miles is really good as well. Sorry.
There's just something enjoyable about Pedro Pascal and whatever he's in.
Yeah.
He's just a kind of likable guy, but also to drive a point for how, you know, people tend to recognize, oh, that guy totally is a villain,
Right.
is that a lot of movies don't really have that extraneous character because
Here's-
he kind of fulfills.
Yeah.
That's
if he's
very
good,
true.
if he's good, he fulfills the same role as Melissa.
Right.
So there's no point in having him
Right.
unless he's a plot device later.
So
Who's Melissa?
another
Susan?
Susan, but the
Susan,
actress's
yeah.
name is Melissa, I think.
Yeah.
Oh.
Leo. Yeah. Another trick, if you're trying to figure out who the bad guy is, check how far into the movie you are. And if it's more than half, you've likely already been introduced to the villain and you just don't know it yet. So
Or it's
just
a bad
kind of
movie.
rule them out and see. But for the most part, you'll have already been introduced to them.
True.
Yeah.
But
It was Miles
the thing,
all along.
The thing is, we thought we had been introduced to him already. In
Yeah.
that opening scene, you're like, it does this clever kind
Right.
of like, oh, it's this guy. I need to look out for
But
this guy.
think about how long it's been before you've seen him.
True.
Yeah.
But that's why
Okay.
the movie was kind of like, I thought it was losing the plot. It's,
Yeah, yeah.
It's trying to get me to just,
Kind of
Yes.
forget a little bit.
But
yeah.
like
Or
Neverending
anticipate
Story
that guy.
2, Baby Rock,
Yeah.
We don't talk
that's
about
pretty
that.
villainous to me.
So,
that was like
I
second
think-
half.
Like I think we end up talking about a lot about how, oh, did you suspect this guy, blah blah blah, and it's not so much that it's super important that we shouldn't be able to guess, but it's I think it's more about how effective is the reveal once it does happen, you know. And we aren't to that part yet, but
Yeah.
it is one of my favorite parts.
yes.
That
Before we move on, sorry. I had one more bullet point that I wanted to hit here, and that is maybe the best Miles McCall scene, where Miles, this whole kind of subplot where he gets kind of brought into this gang seems kind of sloppily set up, but the payoff at the end of it, where McCall and Miles have this just literal face-to-face, like,
Right.
he's trying to talk Miles out of this, but he does it in such a, I don't know, in such a Denzel way, where I was just like, okay, Denzel he's not, this isn't a paycheck movie for him. This is Denzel
He's
on his
actually
A-game.
invested.
So can we get like a rundown, like a 2-sentence rundown of what happens here?
So Miles, who has been kind of, a couple of buddies kind of get him to join, or they want to recruit him for their gang, and they basically give him a gun, and they're like, you got to kill this guy, just pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And the whole time McCall had
Yeah.
been kind of eavesdropping on this from his apartment, saw him get in a car with them, go off somewhere, and basically followed them to this block, I guess, and came in, guns blazing, didn't kill anyone, but was like, Miles, you're coming with me, get out of here, get out.
He had
It was very
multiple
fatherly.
Guns,
Yeah.
guns
Like-
pointed at people's like, Miles, get your butt over here.
But
Yeah.
Yeah,
His, by the way, Miles' investment in, or, you know, basically the influencing factor here is that his brother died because one of the gang members they're trying to get him to kill, or all of them that they're trying to get him to kill, shot him for his gym bag, basically. So he has, like, emotional investment. It's
Yeah.
not just...
Can we like take a moment to just think about how peaceful the world would be if we had like a hotline to Denzel for bad decisions?
For all situations.
You know?
I would love to call him when I'm having a problem.
what would Denzel do?
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, that's not bad.
Denzel, I'm in between jobs and I'm really having a hard time right now during COVID. It's like, well, son, get your act together, and just hangs up. And you're like, he's right.
He's right. I should get my act together.
He's like four words.
But yeah, I thought just the scene where he puts Miles' gun in his mouth and is like, what? It just takes 5 pounds of pressure. You can do this. It was just, you knew Miles wasn't going to do it, but it's still this just intense scene.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, this is one of those scenes where not only for the actors, but for the writer and the director, there's very strong emotion behind this scene, and it's interesting when you come to scenes like that where, oh, this feels a little different than the rest of the film. This feels like an actual conversation that they may have had or have thought about that they're really putting on paper.
I didn't get any of this from the first movie. Almost none of it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of scenes that kind of tap into that.
Yeah.
Why me? Why me?
Like, the situation might be extreme, but the conversation being had is very real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, McCall, he's emotionally invested in people, but he maintains an aloof demeanor externally. But here, he blends in, with the gang scene in the room, and he's, in their environment, and he assumes that role. He's even like, your mother wasn't available or something to that effect, to really intimidate and speak their language, to connect directly with these people and achieve his goal. So, yeah, it's.
I think the line you're referring to is, "I'm your father. Your mother just didn't tell you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. You want to continue with that story?
During one of his lift runs, McCall is attacked by an assassin posing as a passenger. McCall kills the man and retrieves a mobile phone, dumping the car and burning it. He discovers that York's number is on the phone's call list and confronts York at his home. York admits that he became a mercenary after feeling used and discarded by the government, and adds that he himself killed Susan, as she would have figured out that he was behind the Brussels killing. McCall leaves the house where the rest of McCall's former squad, who are also York's current teammates, Kovac, Ari, and Resnick, are waiting. McCall promises to kill the entire team before departing safely by getting a ride from York's unsuspecting wife and children.
Ugh, so much good stuff here. I'm like,
so real quick, you have someone hanging around your back door for 5 minutes. You just let them in, and then you let them carry your, child and drive away with you. You've never met them before.
Yeah, I know. I felt weird about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool if they did have a rapport, like if it would have been a good scene if they didn't just meet.
Well, also I was a little confused. Did he knock, or didn't the doorbell ring? I thought that it did.
She said the doorbell was broken for the back door.
Oh, the back door. So why would? Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's a little weird, but I think I really enjoy this scene when he basically shows up, and Pedro Pascal, I love his acting.
Yeah,
I think he's
also
so good.
Equally subtle.
Yeah, he's very subtle, and that's what you need. Like, if you have a subtle protagonist, you kind of need everyone else to have that sort of subtlety, and he really does.
Yeah.
But he, like, his face when he sees him, where he, that surprise, but immediately trying to,
play it cool.
compose himself, and be like, oh, I got the days mixed up, I guess, kind of a thing, where he wasn't expecting him at all. And then finally, the phone call, when he calls him and his phone starts buzzing, he's like, he knows he's been found out and just kind of looks away and just kind of like mildly frustrated. Well, probably really frustrated.
Yeah,
but
and you were
and
dead.
He's all like, you effer, basically. You you figured it out, kind of thing. I love it.
And even before that, not with Pedro Pascal, but I think the best action sequence in this movie, it takes all of like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And it is the scene where the assassin is in the back of McCall's lift car. Mm-hmm. That scene, just showing
so
McCall
good.
just like using the car, the force of the car to like move control the assassin's movements.
Yeah.
And basically not touching him at all.
Yeah.
Just like, okay,
he elbows him in the face quite a few times.
Another thing I enjoy about this film is they convey to the viewer how he is using body language or understanding of body language to differentiate someone that's out to get him versus someone that isn't.
Yeah.
And you've seen that in the very beginning. He watches people in the back seat of the car, and they don't notice him. They don't really look at him at all. He's kind of invisible. But this guy is pretty much staring at him most of the ride.
And he has
and it's like, that's not normal.
He has that line to where it's like, you must have never been to the airport because I've been driving 2 miles in the opposite direction.
I love that. It's so good.
But yeah, just that last final scene where he pumps the brakes and the guy falls into the front and he just loads him with lead in the
finality of him like grabbing his arm when he like flings him forward and like like basically breaking his leg and then shooting him 3 times, and then
Oh my gosh, it was so satisfying.
and then immediately going back to, all right, drive off.
Arena's hand movements to describe this is great, by the way. I mean, she's reenacting the scene.
When you find good choreography, it's so satisfying.
Arena and I are very on the same level in terms of our gesticulations for when we're
Yeah,
trying to talk.
we are.
It's like, this is what happened. Arms are flailing everywhere.
Yep.
And I get it.
Yeah, but I think this movie is so smart with its action all throughout. Like, it has less long, drawn-out action sequences than the first one, but these short bursts of action, they really make them count.
Yes.
And there is a more extended action sequence towards the end, but leading up to it, it's a lot of just quick bursts of, like, violence that seem more realistic to me, even than the first one. I found the first one's action to be well done as well.
Yeah, but it was fun. Like, it was in a, like, I don't know. Almost the final scene of the first was like a House of Horrors kind of fun, you know?
Yeah, this one knows exactly how much to serve you.
Right.
And this is going to get weird when we get to what critics thought of this, but one of my biggest just disagreements I've seen with a critical score of a movie versus what I actually thought of it. And that's not to discredit any of y'all if y'all didn't like it.
Right.
I was on board with this.
Yeah.
The action and the drama, that it just had... I thought it was all dialed in perfectly.
Yeah, well, and going back to where we were before, where he confronts Dave at his house, and then, you know, when they're leaving, and he's talking to all the other, I guess you'd call them mercenaries? I don't know what you'd call them in this. They used to be Marines together, right?
Yes.
So,
or no, I think they were just they were like some agents for some...
Well, he was a Marine, and I think it was like some sort of thing within there, right?
You put service in before it, but they were basically, you know, spec ops, wet works kind of thing.
Yeah. So I guess at this point, do you think they would be called mercenaries?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So currently they're mercenaries, but they knew each other back in the day, and there's 3 or 4 of them, and he's walking through how he's going to kill all of them. You know, very casually. He's like, yeah, and the only thing that kind of pains me to say is that I can only do it once. And then he just smiles and goes to help out the guy's wife or whatever.
Yeah. The only thing I could have used more in this movie is...
Denzel Washington.
No. I could have used more, like, background as to why York, like, turned coat, essentially. I think originally... So this is kind of how I justified it. McCall regrets his past, and his past had this York guy in it. So apparently maybe they had done some shady stuff in the past, but they still had this connection as friends. And York just ended up taking the darker route, and McCall ended up going the higher road. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of how I justified it, but I was still like, I would have liked more insight into, you know, what makes York tick.
Right.
But
it would have been nice for, and I think he tried to point it out a little bit, but for McCall's death or loss to be the catalyst for him, you know, being completely disillusioned and just being frustrated by the government and everything. So he just, you know, basically goes with the highest bidder now, and then him seeing McCall resurrected just kind of is a slap in the face because you didn't, you know, maintain contact with him. Yeah. Just really seeing that fury instead of basically York is just trying to tie up a loose end, but in the end of it, it doesn't feel personal.
Right.
That conversation they had bothered me in a good way, you know. That
conversation they had bothered me. In a good way.
Well, in the same way that French guy was killed in the beginning, where he's so casual about killing him. He's like, yeah, this is going to happen. The same thing when Denzel is talking with Dave, and he's like, look, man, it's just, you know, it's not personal. There's no sinning. There's no morality. It's just kind of like, this is just what happens.
So that...
He's Belgian. Get it right.
Yeah, that's the part that doesn't quite make sense with his character is there's no right and wrong. There's no morals. And yet you have a family, which I'm assuming you are teaching morals to, but it's just very contradictory. I know you need like kind of
BTK did it.
I know you need sort of another life, but I don't know. There's just really not much explanation as to like, oh yeah, I'm not doing this work anymore. Guess I just have to kill people for money to make a living.
My wife is completely two-dimensional, doesn't suspect a thing.
Nope, not at all.
He just goes off to work.
And hands my child over to strangers who've been working around my back door for...
I also just love the scene where she's about to take them to she's about to take them off, and basically all these obvious mercs are standing in the street talking to him with McCall, and she's just like, all right, I'm going. And like, I don't know.
Maybe
if I
she
were a wife
knows.
and I walked out of the house and saw them all like these beefcakes all just kind of like talking to each other kind of subtly next to a car, I would be like, I don't know, there's
Well,
something.
I got the sense that
something
they
going on.
They probably have these boys over every
I
now
guess.
and then where they're probably like known
Poker
faces.
night.
But
Yeah,
still,
dude,
like,
they're just trying to get their creatine together so they can go to 24 Fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
fitness.
I just think like if you are really close with your spouse, you would be able to pick up on vibes.
Maybe
you know?
she's in on it.
I don't know. Maybe.
I still liked that scene though. I thought it was like
No,
just
it's
the way,
good.
The
it's
way
good.
the way
Yeah.
he played them all,
Oh, yeah.
and then the cherry on top is like, hey, your husband said you'd take me over here.
Yeah.
Like the way he just got out of it.
Yeah.
I know it's like
No,
it's kind of
I love it.
It's reaching, but it's still I
No,
thought they
no,
got
but the
there.
thing is they did it well. Like I do really like that. And then the wind picking up because the storm's coming, you know, like
You're like, I don't know if it works, but I buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And
And
that's filmmaking, honestly.
So let's move on with that story.
All right.
Do you want to just finish the whole thing off?
Yep. Resnick and Ari head to Susan's house to kill her husband Brian, but McCall helps them escape. York and Kovac break into McCall's apartment where Miles is painting the walls. Monitoring the apartment via webcams, McCall directs Miles to a passage concealed behind a bookcase. When York seems to close in on the passage's two-way mirror, McCall phones him to taunt him. Miles emerges from hiding shortly after York and Kovac seem to leave, but is captured as he opens the apartment's front door. York deduces that McCall has gone to his seaside hometown, which has been evacuated as a hurricane approaches. Kovac, Ari, and Resnick begin searching the town in gale force winds, while York situates himself on the town's watchtower in a sniper's position. Kovac enters a tackle shop, where McCall kills him with a harpoon gun. When Ari heads toward the seaside, he is disturbed by pictures of Susan that he sees along the way, catching him off guard. McCall stabs him with knives. McCall then enters his late wife's old bakery store to lure in Resnick, who is fatally injured in a flour explosion that is set up by McCall and set off by Resnick's own stun grenade. York reveals that he has Miles tied up in the trunk of his car and begins shooting at it to lure McCall out. With the storm growing heavier, York is knocked down by a gust of wind before being confronted by McCall atop the tower. McCall gets the upper hand and kills York in the same manner in which Susan was killed with York's knife. McCall then kicks York's body off the tower onto the rocks below, where it is washed away by the ocean. Back in Boston, Susan's information about Sam's painting helps McCall reunite Sam with his long-lost sister. Miles finishes painting his mural on the apartment complex's brick wall, returns to school, and focuses on his art. Having moved back into his old house, McCall looks out towards the calm sea.
Okay, so one of my favorite lines, I know we can just blow by this, but I just love how there is a line that literally says, who is fatally injured in a flour explosion. Like, what?
That's where AJ was making his cakes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He took over the bakery.
So this movie takes a detour into something that I thought was kind of stupid. After York...
Wait, they show you in this one?
Oh.
After York and McCall kind of have their face-to-face, mano a mano, exchanging of words, York and all of his men think it's a super bright idea to just storm McCall's apartment. Which
Look, I actually like that scene a lot.
I like it too. No, the scene itself, when isolated from the rest of the movie, is really well done, and there's a lot of tension there.
It's just not very bright.
Yeah, I'm just like, really, after that threat that McCall gave you, you're going to just try to break into his apartment?
Well, they're cocky, and they all were trained, I would assume, in the same way.
Yeah, they're basically, there's forking, so they're attacking two targets at once, which McCall wouldn't know which one it is. They're trying to address the threat immediately before more damage can be done, like McCall, going to the authorities or setting up or anything like that. So I feel like they're making the best of an unfortunate situation.
Right.
True.
Because they have their backs up against the wall, so they have to lash out and attack.
Well,
no,
also,
it's not ideal, but...
McCall being who he is, he probably has covered up his traces pretty well. So them finding out where he lives is probably more of a challenge than we are led to believe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, it does seem like a little, oh yeah, go find him at his house, whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
I did love the cat and mouse though.
I think honestly too, that's the only place they could learn more information.
Yeah.
So.
And again, I was so much more invested in this, like, them capturing Miles over Ralphie in the first one.
Yes. Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, I care about Miles. I do not want this guy to die. Like, when they finally get the jump on them, and I was like, oh, no. Like,
Dude,
I
there's
knew it was
so much
coming.
tension.
Yeah.
And I had seen this movie before David ended up seeing it, and I was watching it alone. So, like, there were a lot of moments where I was talking at the screen, which is a good sign.
No, don't.
Yeah, don't do it. No, just hurry up, you know, kind of a thing.
The moment that is so creepy to me is when he, like, shines the flashlight into the mirror and he just does the unhappy face.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, he's got him. Yeah, he's got him. He knows he's there. Yeah. And technically, he did probably suspect or know that someone's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole sequence where you're just like, come on, Miles, press the button, you know, like, hurry up,
and then he like turns away at the last thing, like, no.
Yeah.
I just remember when I first heard that somebody was going to the house, like when the two guys were headed there, I was like, oh no. I was like, Miles is in there, just trying to paint the kitchen.
Yep.
No, but this is a really good sign. It's a really good sign when you are talking at the screen. That means you're engaged. It means that you actually care about what's happening.
And what a great way of setting up a character to be in a certain place.
Right.
To then be captured.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You have this
painting
emotional
your walls.
moment where he's like, he invites him into his apartment for the first time, and they kind of have this, bonding moment.
Right.
And he's like, okay, you can paint the walls, but you got to read this book. And then that comes back around to like, yeah, he's there. Of course he's there, painting the walls.
Yeah.
And here you go. It's just a set up and deliver in the right way that I like to see.
And there's also just something kind of like, even though he's sometimes comes across as, I guess, slow, Miles is still like a really endearing character, you know? And so you really don't want anything bad to happen to him.
No,
so him being in there is just like, no.
Well, and I wouldn't even say slow. I would just say like
scared.
He's just young. Like,
no, but I mean, like, he's a bit slow on the draw on things, and you're just kind of like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
but he picks up on it quickly. And
he does.
And what I liked is that he was actually listening to McCall throughout the call.
Yeah.
He wasn't just like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. Or like,
well,
no,
he's
like
also a little confused about the situation. He's like, what's happening?
I would be too if you said, pull a book off the shelf and
like,
press this
okay.
Which, by the way, there was that book scene, right, where so he had to like pull a book out. I thought it was going to be like a stereotypical Scooby-Doo thing where he pulls it and then there's like a lever that
it just
is attached.
opens.
Yeah, but there's in a similar fashion though, there is that button behind it that does open it up.
Everyone should have a secret crawl space.
Yes,
I kind of want that.
Yeah.
But so the book he pulled though to open it was Native Son. Which apparently right after this, Ashton Sanders, who plays Miles in this, went on to play Bigger Thomas, who was the lead character in the movie adaptation of that book he pulled out, Native Son. So that's a fun fact.
That is a fun fact.
Fun fact with David.
Fun fact with David.
So now York basically deduces where Denzel Washington is, or not, sorry, where McCall is. He's kind of at this seaside bake house area.
It's called a bakery.
Bakery.
Yeah.
Bake house.
So thus in
House of Bakes.
the House of Bakes.
It's Bacchus.
But yeah, and this leads up to kind of our final confrontation here, and this is where the movie just goes all out. It's it's an actual full-fledged action sequence. The first one, I would say, and the only one in the movie where it's an extended just gun battle.
Right.
And it almost felt like a horror movie to me, but where the monster is McCall, and you kind of
like,
see
where is he?
The whole thing is told from the perspective, or it's like shown from the perspective of the villains.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
where they're just like, okay, where is he? Like, and you kind of get little glimpses
really
of him
fun.
running in and out, and it's just fun seeing it. It's the same as the first film,
Right.
but it's
better.
Yeah.
It's better
I think
in my opinion. Yeah.
The only thing I would add to it was I wish the storm was actually more of a factor.
Yeah.
Because it felt like a little bit superficially influenced, but not like actually.
The purpose of it was so that this guy, the sniper, not sniper, but the York up at the perch wouldn't be able to see.
Wouldn't have a clear shot all the time.
Which is okay.
Other than that, I really enjoyed the sequence of him picking it off. You know what it reminded me of, actually? It reminded me of
Equalizer 1.
Watching you play Call of Duty or something, where like there's just like this landscape here where there's nobody. It's a civilian landscape or not civilian landscape, and you are just trying to pick off other players. You know, it's like, where is he? Looking through the sniper scope and everything.
So David's a camper.
Yeah.
So AJ, you have some differing feelings on this final act here.
I was disappointed by this final act. Things had kind of been sliding a little bit in the second half of the movie, and this didn't really recapture my attention. I get where they're going for, but it was too much of a tonal shift for me from where he had coming from.
Yeah.
Like it didn't. I wanted something intimate with York, not him just sitting up in the Overwatch position, popping off rounds and yelling at his other guys who were stupidly going individually between alleys instead of what their training would tell them to do is take a squad or a force to clear stuff as a team, as a group, as a unit.
Yeah.
So that, I don't know, that kind of ruined the experience for me. Like, I want to see McCall use his smarts and intelligence to hit them where it hurts and, pick them off, draw them out. And he did that to some extent with the pictures and stuff. And it was nice to incorporate, his wife's bakery and things like that. But at the same time, it was too much of a tonal shift and a pace shift that, I don't know, it kind of killed the momentum for me.
I'll push back slightly on like it being I think the last interaction between these two characters was in the neighborhood. And I took that as like McCall is not even going to dignify or at least not even he does not want anything else to do with York. He will not exchange words with him again. That was like a definitive period to the end of their relationship. And guess what? The next thing that happens, you're just going to straight up die. I'm not even going to let you talk. Like, so
that was nice. Yeah. I did like their last fight. I think it probably, what it did more than ruining McCall's character was ruining York's strength of a villain. Because it really cheapened him. And I wanted to see more of why he was hurt, why he was so invested in getting against McCall instead of, just tying up the loose end, like I said earlier. I wanted that intimate moment where they're both emotionally invested.
You could even argue where his character is almost more of a coward because it's like these two are the opposite sides of a coin where like they have the same abilities, the same skill set. Arguably, McCall is more efficient and just better all around. But one chose to take a normal working job and then help good people on the side or, whatever. And then the other decided to kill for money because that's what he's good at, which is arguably the lazy option.
Which fits with the sniping position.
Yeah. And so the sniping position is just like, I'm up in a safe area.
And lets all his other men go
I have the advantage. Yeah. You all find him. And he's hiding behind a wife and kids. There are all sorts of things, analogies you can use or connections to that you can use. But if that message was pushed a little more of him being a coward, then that would make more sense with this final, sequence. But
I guess I'm just like, I'm a man of simple pleasures where I was just like, I want to see this guy die. I don't care to hear him speak anymore.
By the way he died was super satisfying.
It was a very satisfying death. Like the way he just stabs it in the side of his neck and then just pulls. Like it's like seppuku of the neck.
Right.
I guess they actually got more martial art influence in this movie versus the first one. They were actually getting trained more.
Well, he had what was it? There was martial arts, but there were also MMA fighters and all sorts. They incorporated a lot.
And Denzel was actually doing a lot of his choreography in this movie. Yeah. And it shows.
MMA is martial arts, by the way. That's what the last two words.
Sorry.
Mixed martial arts.
I'm just
Mixed
saying
martial
before
arts.
Someone jumps on us is...
got it. You can cut that out then.
No, I know what you're saying is more practical, brutal, close quarters stuff instead of, the showier stuff.
Right.
So,
the kind of like kung fu
grittier.
or, dancing martial arts. Yeah.
I do have to agree with AJ on the kind of villain aspect feeling a little cheapened. It's okay to like the bad getting defeated, but I want the bad to be at his full capacity, because that makes whenever the hero wins that much more special.
Then that was what I didn't like about the first one, because he subdues him so quickly. Like, it's like there was no actual big throwdown between the two bads. He just comes out of the darkness and shoots him with a nail gun.
But the problem I didn't have as much of a problem with the first one is due to the fact that villain was clearly not on his level to begin with.
Well, this guy they show is lazy. Like, he can fight, but he takes the easy way.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, they do show that he can fight, that he's capable.
Yeah.
I just feel like he was enraged. Like, he was just like yelling in a obviously upset, and so he got his rage to get better of him. But I understand why he was upset. He was acting like a child.
Yeah.
And if they explored the cowardice aspect of him, and that he was internally flawed from the beginning, all the way from when they were operatives together, I don't know.
Otherwise it just kind
more
of
fleshed out.
Feels sort of inconsistent.
Not to mention in the first one they had that whole end sequence, and they played his opponents a lot better as far as them trying to think tactically.
Right.
It kind of just didn't make sense in this one that they all just kind of were like RoboCop running in there to get killed, pretty much.
I don't know. That's what they've always been trained to do. Like, it looked like...
Why? That makes no sense.
They looked very procedural in their... They were like, oh, this is just another job.
Well, yeah, they're not a team. Like, I never got the idea that these guys worked on a team. They were individual.
But they should have been more put together than the other.
Yeah, they were in the same unit.
Well, no, but I thought they were all like
mercenary
I just
took it as cockiness. Like,
yeah.
That's what I saw it as.
Cockiness, but also think about it this way. They're mercenaries, so maybe their targets aren't as,
capable,
efficient as they are. So, for instance, that one French guy he had no idea how to deal with that situation. So maybe their targets are just that easy that they're kind of out of practice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they remember McCall as their squad leader. Right. They should know and fear and respect
exactly.
him.
Like they were a little too cocky.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just don't really think that. I mean, I know in some situations people can get cocky and underestimate, but whenever you're in a situation that could feasibly be a life or death, even if there's a small risk, usually people in certain professions follow that protocol of, okay, I'm going to not get killed, so I'm going to do this by the book.
No, I get it, yeah.
But also a movie.
It is a movie.
No, I know, but...
Look,
you can't just...
We're not going to see eye to eye on this one.
Yeah.
Like, this is just how... It comes down to how you feel about it.
Yeah.
And you were not convinced by it, and I was. I don't think we're ever going to be able to convince each other one way or the other.
I'm not really upset about it. I was just,
No, I know.
I just feel like the type of action in the beginning and the type of action in this last scene did not click together.
Right.
That was my take on it.
I will stand for that death of York, though.
The death is good. Yeah,
I do enjoy it.
Yeah, that was the highlight for sure.
Yeah, and just seeing him fall to the ground on that slab, it almost evoked Lord of the Flies with Piggy, where it's just like he falls on that slab of rock and the
Okay, you're saying that with a smile on your face, and it's making me sad.
That Dumbledore got blasted off the balcony.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But I was watching some special features, and that wasn't CGI, seeing that guy fall down and then fall on a slab. It was a padded green screen at the bottom, but he actually fell that whole distance.
Oh, that's like Alan Rickman in Die Hard.
Yeah. That's like the true trust fall. Like,
imagine falling.
1, 2, fall.
Man.
Okay, so the story wraps up with we remember that there's a Holocaust survivor in this movie, which I had totally forgotten about, but I was still kind of touched by, even though it just seemed like, that does not need to be in. Yeah, it does not need to be in here. And Miles, which he gets a more like justifiable conclusion. How'd y'all feel about the ending to this movie and how it all wrapped up?
I enjoyed it. Like even though the whole Holocaust plot line seemed a little extraneous, like not really part of it either. I still liked it. I was fine with it. I think if you approach this movie from the standpoint of understanding McCall better, you can enjoy it more, you know?
I did like the flip of the line, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Which is that it's said from the villain's perspective in the first one, and it's just like, "Who are you?" Like the moment before you get
I love
killed.
that he doesn't
but
answer
in this
either.
one, with it's Miles coming from a protagonist. Or a good characters,
right?
Like genuinely, like, "Who are you?" Like it just like one.
Yeah.
It was a different flip of that line that I thought.
After all those events, I would really like to know.
Yeah. So yeah, I was happy with it.
And I do love there are so many elements to this movie that you kind of start to forget because of. I guess you sort of see it through the lens of, oh yeah, this is an action film. But really, when you think about all the elements, it's not so much an action film. It's actually kind of leaning more towards the drama when you think about it.
With little bursts of action.
With bursts of
like,
action.
I thought it was similar to almost Drive in that way.
Yeah.
Whereas like Drive, you think of that as an action movie. Those movies are totally different from one another. But when you actually time out how much action there is in the movie Drive, it's probably very little.
Yeah.
Wait, did Drive want a sequel?
I don't know.
I want to look into that.
Drive has a kind of disconnected trilogy that are linked thematically but not sequentially.
Yeah,
Right.
Only God Forgives and Neon Demon.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just think that I love this element of the book being unfinished, you know? And he sort of sets it aside to follow through with this final act, or it feels like a final act of, you know, eradicating these bad guys and avenging his friend. Mm-hmm. And then he returns home, the place that she suggested he goes back to and makes peace with, and that's where he's finishing the final book. It's just, there are so many nice touches to this film that need to be
There's a lot of
acknowledged.
symmetry to it.
The last shot of him looking over the ocean
Right.
was a bit... I thought it was... If you have a cheesy chart from 1 to 10, this was Gorgonzola. In my opinion.
How do you feel
I did
about
not care for that
Gorgonzola?
shot.
The looking over the sea, yeah.
All right. That finishes up our discussions on the story of The Equalizer 2. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll get to the franchise side of this. We'll talk some box office, get into our brief reviews, and see what critics thought, and so forth. So stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's talk about The Equalizer 2.
Thus.
Or is it Equalizer 2? Is there
Yeah,
another?
it's Equalizer too.
The Sequelizer.
It's The Equalizer 2.
All right, The Equalizer 2. We're going to start off with giving our brief reviews, which, David, you have in a bowl. Why don't you pull one of those at random?
You hear that? That's a bowl. And I dropped one. Well, let's start with that one then. Because it decided it wanted to pop out first.
Hey,
it looks like
I think
Noah's.
it's Noah's.
Yeah.
He folded his into a
Noah
triangle.
with a 6.5.
That. Wait.
That is the adjusted score.
I will up it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No. I actually.
Wait, are you going back to your original score? Son of a...
No, alright. Yeah, like hearing different perspectives on it kind of changes the way you view things. Because the first time I watched this, it kind of dragged for me a little bit, and I wasn't as invested because I felt the emotional highs in the first one. But I actually fully agree on the emotional levity of all the situations being much better in this one. The emotional gravity, that's what I meant to say, of, Melissa?
Her
Susan.
her name in this is Susan. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, her death had a lot of effect, and there's that scene later on where Pedro Pascal's character has approached her, and, you know, she, like, puts her hand on his, like, knee because she knows him, but it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And that kind of that kind of attention to detail kind of convince me to like push it up, you know, just a smidge. And I actually am going to bring it up to a 7.5.
All right.
Not to mention it's Denzel being Denzel. It's Ralphie 2.0. But other than that, I think it's an enjoyable movie. I mean, it does drag, and there I can fault it in a couple areas, but you know, it's not bad enough to be that much lower than the first one.
Well, to follow up, we have AJ with a similar score, or original score anyway, 6.5.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, so I'll stand there. There are things the first movie does better on a storyline level than this one. This one gets a lot more of the details right, especially in the first half. I enjoyed the first half of this movie. The second half kind of slid off. And then, as you heard, I didn't really care for the way they handled the last act, although I was fine with how York was finally defeated. But I feel like from a storyline standpoint, there are things that could have been fixed a little bit. Especially, I mean, we talked about with the old man, and that's fine to establish some character background, but it was too much screen time when it could have been went towards either York's background or a little bit more on Miles. So I think 6.5 is definitely a fun movie. It just they're hard. It's hard for me to pick out those times that, you know, I liked and give credit for. But it's hard for me to remember those until I rewatch it again, because everything that stands out for me is that last scene. It was just kind of bleh for me. So
that sounds fair.
Yeah, 6.5 is average or positive, but you know, nothing stellar. So yeah, I'll stand there.
All right.
And they stand there.
And then they stand there. Stupid. All right. Next up.
But you went along with it.
I did. I couldn't help it. Is David with a 7.5. So I think I gave the other one a 7.5. I've been bouncing back and forth between the two this whole movie. They're very similar for me in the fact that they're both 7.5s. I think they're both very good, slightly above average for what I expected out of it. They're very different vibes, right? So you have the Russian, you know, storyline in the first one, and then you have I guess mercenaries would be the one to say in this one.
American mercenaries. They seem like, at least to me.
Yeah, and they're just tonally everything's different to me, but in the end, I think they're very similar. This one has better acting in some places. I like the way they added more detail, but there is something charming about that first movie. Like, even thinking back on it now, I have fond memories. So,
like if you had to like pick one to be closer,
I would probably give
than the other to Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Oh,
which would it be?
I thought you were gonna. That was clever. I thought you were going a different direction.
That was good.
I would have to say Tomb of the Dragon Emperor has a slight edge on rewatchability.
Oh, gotcha.
This movie probably wins
at a 7.
Yeah, 7. Tomb of the Dragon. David gave Tomb of the Dragon Emperor a 7 almost a year ago, guys. I'm just gonna say it's been almost a year. It may have been over a year.
I think it's over a year.
No, actually, it's like a year and a half. Never mind. It's been... How long have we been doing this?
A while.
This is crazy. I think it was October of 2019. Anyway.
A couple of months, probably.
That notorious episode will never die in our hearts and minds.
Yes, and you're not going to find it on Spotify. And if you really feel like going out of your way to actually hear the stupid episode, it's on Screenpunk. So look up Screenpunk, look up our podcast, and you can scroll down and find it.
Those are our like negative episodes.
The first 15.
There's 15 episodes before our first episode, and that was one of them.
Yep. So enjoy if you actually listen. And the audio is way different, so it's probably not going to be the same.
Oh, it's crap.
It's crap. All right. But as far as these movies go, I was very close to giving this one an 8, but I think I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay with the 7.5.
All right.
Next up, Reese with an 8, doing what I could not.
This is me shooting from the hip, but sticking with my heart.
Sticking to your guns.
Yes.
Shoot from the hip, sticking with my heart.
There you go.
We should put that on a shirt.
That's an Amber kind of statement right there.
This, because like my critical brain was like, I'm gonna give this push up my nose. A 7.
Not your glasses. You're pushing up your nose.
Just push up your
Yeah, push up it. No, like
He doesn't have glasses
all
right
when you
now.
sorts
push
of
up your
phrases.
nose, it's like
No, Reese, you're
It
keeping
makes a
your,
little
your
like
nose up.
snotty
There
pig
you go.
nose.
Like the kid from Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
I bite my thumb at you, sir.
No, for me, I was like, my pen was wavering over the paper, so tempted to just make a
Harry
7.
Potter.
Like, just, I was going to write a 7.
We have the critic sickness where
But I was actually thinking about it, and I was like, no, this movie just really was dialed into, my sensibilities, what I like out of a film like this. For one, the first movie felt like Denzel Washington just heads and shoulders above everything else, and the movie was just trying to keep up with him. This one feels like everything else has caught up to Denzel Washington, and it is almost, I won't go as far to say an orchestra, but it's like, yes, everything is kind of operating on the same level now. All of the side characters have been brought up to kind of meet Denzel Washington in the middle versus all of these cliches surrounding him. Like I was so invested in Miles as a character, I was invested in York as a character, even though I could have used more out of him. It just felt much more balanced to me. And it didn't go excessively hard on the action, and it decided to keep things really pointed and quick. Like it knew that, if you have, it doesn't matter how long your action sequence is, it matters just how well choreographed and how just memorable it is. And the length has nothing to do with that. The excess has nothing to do with that. And this movie was smart enough to have these punctuated action sequences peppered throughout, especially the one in the car with the assassin in the back seat. Just the way that McCall is smart enough to and he's so competent behind the wheel that he knows how to keep this guy away from him, but also drive the car and then eventually just like pump him full of lead right at the end. This movie also has more of an emotional gut punch for me with the Susan Plummer character. Just having her die and have that be a very personal connection to McCall really gave it more of a narrative thrust to me. My issues with the movie that take it down, though, is just how it kind of loses the plot in the middle. I don't knock it too hard, though, because it replaces that section with this well-developed Miles-McCall relationship. And it just kind of, it's too, I like it and I don't, because it's like kind of trying to distract you from figuring out that York is the main bad, and it's kind of throwing these other things at you in the meantime to just kind of, so you don't really catch on to that scent. But it still was like, okay, it's kind of losing the plot for me a little bit here. So that's why I knock it down a couple points. But I was just very pleasantly surprised by this movie, because I was kind of, and maybe that's why I have it at an 8, because I had such lowered expectations for the sequel to The Equalizer, a movie I already wasn't, super amazed by. But this one really surprised me, and I think the Antoine Fuqua is like firing on all cylinders in this film, and I think it is, out of the two, the more definitive Bob McCall, The Equalizer movie. So I will stick with my 8.
All right. In last but not least is Irina, swinging for the fences with a 9.
Swinging for the fences.
Irina, I knew we had synergy here.
I don't know why, but for some reason, I was just, this movie hit me better. And my first reasoning is because the first is, while it is good, it just feels a little juvenile. With this one, it could have been so easy to just follow the same narrative, but with a different situation. And here, it at least feels like the whole team tried to step it up, and they did solve a lot of the issues I had with the first film. You don't have to do that with sequels. Some people just kind of phone it in, and more often than not, sequels are worse than the first film. So this one, I think, is better than the first, and I would definitely go out of my way to watch this one rather than the first Equalizer. I think it actually could stand on its own as well. Mm-hmm. And this is how I would prefer to be introduced to this character. Other than that, I think there's something about the framework that really does make Fuqua seem like more of an artist than you would expect.
There's more expression from him on this one than in the first one.
It's like he puts a lot of his own influences into a lot of the dialogue as well. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the way the movie flows is very similar to, like, imagine it as like parentheses expanding out, where there's a certain plot line at the center and there's another plot line that is finished outside of that, and then another outside of that. So you start with, for instance, this Holocaust guy. That's one of the last things resolved in this film.
Yeah.
And in between that is Miles, where you learn about Miles after Holocaust guy. Which I love that I'm calling him that.
Yeah.
Miles is resolved before his story is resolved. And then within that is his own personal story. And in a weird kind of artistic lens, it's like the eye of a storm in a weird way. So there's something about this, the way this is constructed, that is very unusual for an action film.
Yeah.
To the point where I think trying to look at it as an action film sort of detracts from your appreciation of it. So I like to think of it more as a McCall film, and whereas the first film sort of relied upon Denzel's performance to carry it, this one, at least the rest of it is, like you said, keeping up with his performance. And all the actors are really putting their all into it. So that's why I gave it a 9. There are a lot of issues that still need to be resolved, but once those are tweaked and fixed, I think they basically would have hit what Fuqua was aiming for.
Irina looking for the sequel, or the Sequelizer 3. Equalizer 3. I'm saying it now.
Sequelizer 3.
I'd be fine with them ending here, honestly. Like, I think this is just a nice
I wouldn't
little...
be surprised
well,
if they would.
also the fact that this is the end makes sense because he's on his final book anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I think it's wrapped up very nicely.
Yeah. All right. I'm glad we had some synergy there, Irina.
Yeah.
I liked AJ's onion comment, by the way.
Yeah,
so.
like an onion or a
Did it make you
parfait.
cry?
Or
not
ogres.
a parfait.
Like
All right.
cakes.
Let's
Okay,
get to
group average is 7.7, which ties it to King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and Ghost in the Shell.
I was not expecting this to go this way, by the way. Like, I was fully expecting this to be like out of all of the movies we're covering in your mini-series of Vigilantes, I was like, okay, this will be like the nadir of it.
Was I put down as a 7 or a 7.5 for that?
7.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's get into critics. This is where it gets a little sad. For me, at least. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 51%, so right down the middle there, with an audience score of 60%, so just barely passing, like just barely in the fresh there. And the consensus for Rotten Tomatoes is written as such: The Equalizer 2 delivers the visceral charge of a standard vigilante thriller, but this reunion of trusted talents ultimately proves a disappointing case study in diminishing returns.
What does that mean?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I have a feeling it has to do with the fact that John Wick has put out, 3 movies by the time, or close to 3 by the time this one came out?
Might be.
I think John Wick 3 was 2018.
Yeah, so this one came out 2019.
2018.
Oh.
Yeah, they're
Same
both
year.
2018.
Okay.
That's funny how John Wick and this one have lined up on 2 occasions same year.
So the point is, though, that you had 3 movies of Vigilante. I feel like it almost toned in the same way Marvel did with superheroes. This is like almost like a DC version of a John Wick movie.
Yeah.
Where they're just trying to put out their own version of it, and it's just not hitting the same highs that the other does.
What's funny is those 2 franchises start to tap into different things as they go. Like, the original John Wick is very personal. He loses his dog, which was attached to his dead wife. It's a very personal revenge story. And then John Wick becomes kind of this just... It's action. It's less personal, but it's like super well choreographed, extended action sequences. This one, I would say, starts off less personal to McCall in the first film. It is still vaguely personal because he has this a semi-relationship with the prostitute
Ralphie
girl.
has to work. Oh wait,
yeah, her and Ralphie. Like, he's like tangentially related to them, but it's not like hitting to his core.
Right.
Whereas in this one, starts to focus more in on actual personal connections to McCall throughout his history. He's known Susan for a very long time. So this one's almost like maximizing the personal, whereas John Wick kind of starts to phase that out.
Right.
And there's two different approaches that I feel like both work for each's franchise.
Right.
So yeah, they're different in a sense. But let's get to... Oh, no, I'm not done with the critics. Metacritic. This movie has a 50 on Metacritic. Yep. Yeah, so this, again, right down the middle
Metacritic normally is lower, though.
Yes,
Yeah,
Metacritic trends lower.
IMDb, though, come on, give us a 7.
But the Metacritic audience score was higher, with a 6.6, which is technically in the green.
That's in...
What's IMDb, though?
IMDb is 6.7.
Okay.
Also kind of positive. So
Low for IMDb, though.
It's not a total lost cause for this movie with the critics. I want to say they're missing something with this one. That's just my personal feeling.
Yeah.
But then again, whatever. It's not a total lost cause.
This is your podcast. You're allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah, there's people.
Then again, whatever.
There's still people that went to bat for this movie, and that makes me happy. It wasn't like a landslide of negative reviews or anything.
Right.
It's like mixed, and then there's positive reviews sprinkled throughout there. So I'll take it. Let's move on to the box office. This movie released on July 20th in 2018 against Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. And also playing in theaters, but not opening weekends, were Hotel Transylvania 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and The Incredibles 2.
All sequels.
Yeah, all big movies, too.
Oh, so,
I think MI6 was a week later.
Yeah, MI6 was the week after this. Yeah.
Probably the reason why David didn't know this is because, or of this movie, is he was just watching Hotel Transylvania
3.
Yep.
He was so hyped.
Adam Sandler's, baby.
And what's going on with Mavis?
Mavis?
She's the
girl.
daughter.
Yeah.
Look, to be honest, I didn't watch any of this.
Come on, don't pretend. I've seen that poster on your wall.
If Adam Sandler.
Weird.
All right. So with that, the movie's budget, it's reported at around $62 million, although there's some talk about it being actually over the $70 million mark. But the official listed budget on Box Office Mojo is $62 million, which is $7 million above the first one. So it's about in the same ballpark as the first one. So what do y'all think? Worldwide, what did this movie make? Noah?
Ooh, 150.
150?
150.
155. Nice little adjustment there.
Yeah.
Irina?
125.
125. AJ?
120.
And I'm going to box myself in at 140.
140. So Noah, you said 150?
Yep.
You are the closest.
Oh, wow. It made that much?
Yeah.
This movie did... This is I think it's almost exact to the first one. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a sequel do, like, exactly the same numbers as the first one, but this one did. So, domestically, it did $102 million, which the first one did $102 million.
Dang.
And worldwide, it did $190 million, which the first one did $192 million.
That's crazy.
So, these ones are just... like neck and neck. This one performed slightly less as well as the first one.
All of the Denzel fans went and watched it.
Yeah, I think that might be the case.
It had about the same opening as the first one, kind of like a mid 30 million opening, and it legged it just like the first one did, which means it had staying power with the audience. That means there was word of mouth that was positive for this one, even though it doesn't really show on IMDb or any of the other sites.
Yeah.
There was a return, like people kept coming to see this one, and it legged it to $102 million. It's a funny thing about these two Equalizer movies. They
Equalize.
they both had pretty leggy theatrical runs,
right?
And which is actually more impressive for this one because it released in the summer, which usually movies in the summer don't typically leg it out as much as movies in the fall do. Which the first Equalizer released in, I want to say, September. This one was, June. What did I just say? I said one of the J's. July.
One of the J's.
Yeah.
January.
Yeah. This one, peak summer. It was against some big heavy hitters, and it still managed a mid 30 million opening and had legs, which I think is like kind of unheard of, especially when a movie is like not reviewed quite as well as the original.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to say
that
there's some unspoken fans to this second one that I feel like need to start voicing voicing their opinions a little more loudly. Exactly. So yeah, decent, actually good box office performance. This is literally almost exactly the same scenario as with the first one. So you'd think, like, hey, we're getting Equalizer 3, right? Right?
Wrong.
That was a big yawn. I feel like that was like picked up on the mic.
I said wrong.
And you're like,
it wasn't a yawn. I didn't even yawn.
Let me guess.
That sounded like a zombie.
Let me guess. No.
So this one is still kind of up in the air. Like I would say an Equalizer 3 is less certain than the Equalizer 2, because Equalizer 2 was already in like the script writing phase before Equalizer 1 was even out. Like they were planning on the sequel. This one's less that. It was more just like, let's wait and see. And now we're kind of like in a limbo phase. Antoine Fuqua was actually interviewed about a potential sequel, and he's like, yes, I would definitely be down to do that. He kind of alluded to waiting on Sony to give the green light for it, and also hoping that Denzel Washington would want to come back, which means like maybe they really haven't had that conversation. So if there is an Equalizer 3 in the works, it's in the very, very early stages, if at all. And complicating things even further, we have this CBS show that just debuted, The Equalizer, titled the same, but in a gender-swapped role, we have Queen Latifah playing, wait for it, Robin McCall.
Hey.
We going like Ocean's 8 here?
Yeah, and that show has already going to be renewed for a second season, so it shows that it does have a following. The launch was successful, apparently. So then you kind of get a like, okay, would it be complicating matters to have two McCalls running at the same time, like your Denzel McCall and then your Latifah McCall? Would that confuse...
Clash of universes.
Yeah, would that confuse audiences? I don't think it would, because you have Star Trek doing the same stuff. You've got Chris Pine in, that Star Trek version, and we have Star Trek Discovery going on right now as well, and they're still talking about a Star Trek 4 with the Chris Pine crew and all that.
Is Discovery already out?
Yeah, Discovery's like 3 seasons in already.
All right. I was like, I need to get on that.
But then again, that's Star Trek, and like anyone's going to show up for something labeled Star Trek.
Right.
Yeah,
and
they also completely wrote off the second movie.
Yes. Yeah, so we're kind of we're in a bit of a unknown phase with the Equalizer. I'm actually, this is one where it's really hard for me to call. Like, normally I'd be able to tell you, like, yes, this is getting a sequel, or no, it's not. I'm really on the fence with this one. I think, like, it would not surprise me if 2 years down the line, Equalizer 3 was announced or even is out.
So you think this one's dormant?
I think it is a dormant franchise, if there ever was one.
Important to say that this is the only, we said it in the first episode, but we ought to mention it here again, this is the only sequel that Denzel's ever acted in.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
So
yes, yeah. So, but he has such a well-established relationship with Antoine Fuqua. He's been working with him. This is like his 4th movie with him. He did Training Day, he did Magnificent Seven, Equalizer 1, and this one. So I feel like if Antoine Fuqua wants to do something with Denzel, Denzel's going to be more inclined to work with him on a sequel versus anyone else.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm really 50-50 on this one. And I cannot definitively say whether or not there will be a third one in this franchise.
Yeah, we're a little
uncertain. The state of Sony.
Yes. But yeah, let's do the last part of this episode where we determine whether or not this is an honorable or dishonorable death to the Equalizer franchise. For those that are new, once we're done with a series of films, we dub it honorable or dishonorable in terms of how it ends, that being on a note where it does not need to be followed up by a sequel. It is a definitive end, or if it leaves loose ends that still need to be tied up, which would result in a dishonorable label. So guys, honorable or dishonorable for the Equalizer 2?
Honorable.
Honorable. I think it's honorable. It basically resolves kind of like his issue with his wife too.
Yeah, I would agree. Honorable.
Yeah, he moves back home.
Yeah.
Yeah. AJ, you're in agreement?
Yeah.
All right, honorable for the 2 Equalizer movies. That means you can watch this this series and be satisfied with the conclusion and not left hanging by some cliffhanger with no, actual conclusion to the arc of McCall's story. So there you go.
Yeah, the franchise score, by the way, 7.5 between the two. So
much better than I thought it would be going into these two films. So
I think that's good.
Yeah,
Relatively fair.
That's a win for Denzel Washington and Antoine Fuqua's The Equalizer. Next week, we're moving overseas here. I guess we already were overseas, but
to New Zealand.
No, we're not going to New Zealand. We're going to London.
Oh,
we're talking about Eastern Promises. Yes, that's right. That film wanted a sequel. Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Can you believe
Then some of you are going, what is Eastern Promises?
Yeah, Eastern Promises. It's a David Cronenberg film starring Viggo Mortensen, gangster movie, but also a kind of stealthy vigilante movie. It actually does.
I'd say we're shifting our theme a bit. Yeah. And there's a sub-theme running through this a little bit, so I'd say more hitman with a heart is maybe our
I think it is revealed to be a vigilante movie by the end, like in a weird way.
I'd say
he's also a hitman.
Yeah.
We will have to talk about it in the next episode.
Catch it next time.
I look forward to it. Next week, Eastern Promises. Have a good one.
So long.
Make sure I get a 5-star rating, Junior.